Hey everybody, this is Marushka, aka Loa Mist. I'm here in downtown Los Angeles with Keshia Hannam. I'm really excited.
I haven't heard your podcast voice.
My podcast
It's very
voice is my
sultry.
smooth radio voice. I'm really excited because we're actually sitting in crystal throne chairs right now.
We're literally sitting in
crystal throne chairs.
It's very comforting to touch.
It's really amazing, and it's exciting for me to see you here because you're not the kind of person that would technically be penned as someone who would really care about crystals or like be impacted by them.
I'm not a purveyor of crystals typically. I think you gave me my first crystal.
I think I did. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to now be facilitating your first crystal throne chair. And we'll talk more later in the podcast about exactly where we are, but it's related to a workshop that I'm facilitating this month with some other women that's about tapping into crystallizing your personal power. So that's why I thought Keshia would be the perfect person to catch up with right now. I feel like...
That's high praise.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know that you would think this about yourself, but I find you to be someone who has a very active wealth of personal power. And when I say active wealth, I think a lot of people have a wealth. All people have a wealth of personal power. A lot of people also don't know how to tap into that and don't necessarily activate it and have it be active in their life. And I feel that you do.
I mean, it's really it's so lovely to hear that, and thank you. And I think interesting that you're framing it like that, because I have always said that if I had one purpose or one thing I was intending to see in people or to create because of my life, it is people understanding that they have the ability to make change in their own lives first and then in the world at large thereafter. And so that it's I've never actually correlated that intent with the idea that is personal power, right? I've called it autonomy. But totally.
And that's part of the reason why you're in Los Angeles right now, is you've been speaking particularly to the impact of storytelling and how each person has their own story to tell, which is very aligned with the idea of personal power, right?
Totally. And I've been working here with an amazing company called Dear World, and Dear World's ethos is very much that everybody has a story worth sharing, and the power happens, or the power of stories is actually in us exchanging them with one another. So every person does have a story to tell, but we unlock safety, we unlock potential by sharing those stories with one another. Humans have created meaning from stories, and the power is in the exchange of them. So that's really been an amazing journey that I've been on, working with the team there, who are all really, really talented people, learning the technique of storytelling. And that's actually something that I see a lot when... As we'll work with people, right? So I'll usually do sort of like a keynote, and then we'll have either a booth or a facilitation, and I'll sit with people, and it's crazy to me how much people feel like they don't have a story. They'll be like, I mean, I don't really have a story, and it's like, no, but you do.
Where do you think that comes from?
It's a really good question. I think we rely on outside forces a lot across the board. We are always waiting for somebody to come and save us, and there's an element where we need to feel safe to be able to tell our story. But also we live in this hyper-capitalist, hyper-type 3 type world where it's like, unless your story is perfect, or unless your story is tragic, or unless your story is the funniest, it's not worth sharing. And that's heartbreaking.
It's so true. You and I talk a lot as well about how capitalism has colonized our minds in such subtle ways, and how those layers can stay for a very long time.
And how much we've internalized.
Exactly.
We've internalized capitalism so deeply that we can't even tell how much productivity is our self-worth.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting for me to ask you because, again, part of the facilitation of the workshop that will be in this space is something that I think leans very openly towards the sort of spiritual and esoteric. And I think there are some people who are very comfortable with that. And then there are others who have different kinds of relationships with inspiration that can come from inside of themselves or from a divine source. And you and I have had the conversation that if spirituality is something that isn't necessarily a cornerstone of your life in a way that feels easy to access, maybe you have a unique and unconventional path with it. Maybe yours started in religion and developed into something else, or wasn't really there as a foundation and then became religion. I wanted to ask you, where did your connection to your personal power really come from? Do you feel like you have any sense of that? Because yours is very strong, but you also don't have, a sense of spirituality that I could easily attribute that to, though you do have a sense of things beyond you and within you.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. I think, my journey, I first of all had very, very loving parents. I'm really thankful for how I was raised. And my father, he would always tell me this story, or he would always sort of talk to me about televisions, and he would point to a television and he would say, I don't know how to make a TV. I have no idea. I can fly. He was a pilot. He's like, I can fly a plane. I don't know how to make a TV. But if I sat with somebody and with the right amount of time, I would know how to make a TV. And like that simple story in the device of a television, which was such a, everyday item, it made me look at the world and be like, oh, I don't know how to do that thing, but I can learn. And it's such a liberating feeling, because it's both humbling, and you're not coming in being like, I know how to do this, but you are coming in and being like, somebody can teach me, and then I can learn to be a master of that thing.
That's really fascinating, because actually I think Tony Robbins' definition of personal power is the ability to respond, the ability to act. And when I heard that, I found that very fascinating, especially as a woman, because I think that what you touched on of most people are all waiting for someone to rescue them, but especially women.
Especially. So because we've been told to.
Exactly.
We've been conditioned our whole lives to wait for a rich
someone,
daddy,
something.
A rich husband, a rich boss. So much of it has to do with money, and so much has to do with a male savior mentality. And it's so deeply ingrained that you again, it's like internalizing capitalism. You don't even know that it's there.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask that, as someone who works so much with women, and if you want, it'd be nice if you want to touch a little bit on what Camel Assembly is for anybody who doesn't yet know. I was curious, when you work with different women, because you work with so many different cultures, women of different age brackets, and all different kinds of life choices. On the note of personal power, is there some sort of common thread that you see happening right now? Because it feels like it's a very powerful shifting time for a lot of women, and a lot of women that I know that wouldn't normally be related, because they have different socioeconomic backgrounds, they have different cultures, religious beliefs, all seem to be experiencing the same liberating shift that's empowering them. Do you feel that? Do you see that in your work?
Definitely. I think that, and a lot of our work is in developed countries, like even in developed circles of emerging markets. So, for example, in Nairobi, it is still a very global community that we have there. In Mumbai, same thing. So I do want to kind of put that disclaimer out. But, Camel Assembly's work. So Camel Assembly is a creative women's community, and our intersection is art and activism. That's what we always, it doesn't matter if you're an artist or an activist, but we believe that everybody has the ability to be creative and to put their energy every day into something that they care about, specifically relevant to who they are. And in running these communities around the world, 4 years ago, which is when Camel Assembly started, the conversation was very different around women. And it's interesting to highlight that to people, because in terms of big global events, this was pre-Trump, right? This was pre-Me Too. This was pre-huge political shifts that had happened, where we were not reacting to anything. There's a lot of stuff that's popped up now in terms of, I think there's a lot of things that have come up in reaction to things that have gone on socially or politically. Camel Assembly started as almost like preventative, where it was like, hey, we should all be together because stuff's going to come down in the future, and we should be kind of weathering the storm together. So let's gather now so that we're ready to kind of fight that later on. And now the conversation is very different. I think that now people are able to check themselves a lot more. I think that the conversation around women is angering a lot of people if they're really holding on to ego and holding on to dated beliefs. But I think for the most part, people are like, yeah, no, we get it. It's something that we all need to lend our hand to. And I think that women are feeling like it is crazy, the social activation that comes from these larger political or media movements, where it's like, say something with Me Too. I do find women a lot bolder now, a lot bolder to be like, hey, don't touch me, whereas before we would be like, that was a bit weird, I do think that there is this autonomy or this personal power that has come from the way that consciousness has shifted. Now, I think what we are lacking is an infrastructure to facilitate that. So we maybe we have like small things like HR practices where somebody might be rebuked, but it's still not undoing the hurt that women have endured for years and years and
still
years.
So much healing of so much trauma going on.
It feels very symptomatic versus looking at what the cause is and healing that. So, and I think we have to have patience in that. I don't think that it's going to happen tomorrow, but I do think that we are still reacting, and we need to go back and be like, even with things like the future is female, you know, I've never advocated for that message, and you know this, like, I don't think that we will change the world speaking only to one half of it, men or women. So I don't think that we need to now replace patriarchy with matriarchy. What I think we need are gender indiscriminate systems that empower everybody and exclude none. But I think that happens by going back here and not sort of reacting to what's happening and being like, taking those things as signals, but linking them back to the cause. And I think that will bring more longevity than we're experiencing now.
That's so interesting to me. Also fascinating that you bring up, because I know about the future as female and your relationship to it, and we've spoken about this before. And Kiran Gandhi was actually a good friend of mine years ago before her marathon, before any of that ever happened. And I found it so interesting because she always hung out with mixed crowds of men and women as well. So it was interesting to see from afar, as well as the growth of her message really started to touch many different parts of the world and many different people. It was also interesting to remember how our messages become adopted and then reduced to the 3 words that are being presented and repeated everywhere. And I think that with that in mind, I was curious, in terms of Camel Assembly, now that you're saying the conversation does feel different given the climate of this consciousness shift, but that is still reckoning with so much past trauma as well as intense present circumstances, trying to maintain patience, but also knowing that we do need to really put our eyes on the future and act now, as you say. What is a message from Camel Assembly that you feel comfortable sending out into the world, knowing that others may interpret it and make of it as they will?
Yeah, we've been really careful about our messaging, and that's honestly, it's been not a hindrance, but it's definitely something that's taken us the slower route, because we are aware of how polarizing messaging can be, and we never wanted to put out anything that was polarizing. That's the opposite. It would be more detrimental. So we I think one of our biggest message, and something that we will always stand by, is the message of marching daily. So that is the intent of Camel Assembly. The idea of marching daily is taking the kind of passion or the vehemence that you might feel at a protest or a march, and truly, God bless those spaces for what they have done, not having a go at them. But I do feel that there is something very significant about channeling the emotion and the intention and purpose that we feel in those rallies, and taking them into sort of this everyday efforts towards, okay, if you don't care about environment, don't be a climate activist. Like, that's not something you have to care about. But if you have dealt with mental health, or if you have dealt with abuse in your life, there is a place for you to be able to share your story, to be able to heal other people. And so our message is, take that passion from the protest, from that march, and channel it into the 1 or 2 things that you care about, and do that every day, or at least do that every week, and the transformation, I think, and we see this in previous eras in religion, say, where I think that so much of the freedom with religion is in not thinking of the self and being able to focus on a higher purpose, being, people, whatever that is. And I think that we are lacking that a bit now, as much as I totally advocate for self-love and self-care and putting your boundaries in. I think there is something very powerful about, for a moment, being able to take away all of the onus on self and what I want and what I'm fighting for, and being like, how can I contribute? How can I support my fellow woman or man? How can I, or whomever, how can I support this this movement, this city. You know, there is something very liberating for the human spirit that I think things like technology and convenience and the overwhelm of messaging has taken away from us and made us very, very stuck in our heads.
So just finding your way of marching daily in whatever capacity, and knowing that that can take so many different forms.
And it shouldn't feel like work, you know? Like, it should feel like, what's the thing that comes up for you all the time? What's the thing that you so naturally care about and read about? And it's like, it shouldn't be painful. I think we've made activism painful, you know?
It should
where
be
it's like,
tapping into your personal power.
Totally,
right?
Totally, exactly. Yeah. Like, you do have a personal power having overcome something. Everyone's overcome something. So it's like, whether it's as simple as, like, for me, I didn't have a huge array of trauma in my life, and I'm very privileged to be able to say that. But what I did have was being a biracial immigrant in a largely white community, and kind of being a perpetual immigrant my whole life, going from Hong Kong to Australia to Korea to India to Nairobi to London to America now. I have always been an immigrant, so I've always needed to kind of grapple with the idea of belonging.
Which now, in and of itself is a level of trauma.
Absolutely, and not trying to minimize the non-violent traumas. They are still traumas, but recognizing that no matter what you have dealt with, there is a space for your story and the way that you chose to overcome that thing to be of almost like a life ring for somebody else, you know? And I think we see that in books, you know? We read about characters and we see ourselves in that character, and then we're like, how did you navigate that situation in that book? And I think we are living examples of that. You know, we are all characters. We have all had traumas or personal experiences. We have overcome them using our personal power, and now we have the ability to be able to march daily for that thing and share that with other people.
Wow, what a perfect full circle to come to. Essentially what you've said to me feels like marching daily is tapping into your personal power, and in that way illuminating for another person how to connect with their own personal power, and in that very sustainable and achievable, applicable way being able to make global change by tapping into your individual change and then paying that forward by inspiring.
Totally. And I think that's also like, I am the person that will stand on a stage and talk about changing the world, you know, but I think that the way to do that is actually so accessible. It's not that grandiose. It's not that complicated. It's not that intimidating, and we've made it so because it's like, I mean, are you going to run for president?
It's very capitalist again.
Like, oh God, yeah, exactly. It's like, are you going to be a Fortune 500 CEO?
Yeah, because if you're not going to be in Forbes, it's not worth even
don't
having
even worry
a club.
about it. Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, did you organize a beach clean? Oh my God, you've just saved a turtle from that straw that you pulled out. You know, it's like, it's learning to find joy and meaning in the micro moments, you know, because those micro moments, J. Cole has this amazing interview and he talks about like how you work so hard to get to this place, and then you get to the place and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel anything. Like, this doesn't feel good or bad. It just feels like I have been. So I'm going to go back and like be in all the moments that I wasn't present in. I'm going to go back and like feel the fulfillment of the moments to get to wherever I'm going, because it all feels pretty much the same. And I think you probably resonate with that. Even it's like, even in the various levels of success I've had, where I've been flying and I've been like, I can't pay my rent. You know, it's like, it all feels pretty much the same. You know?
Well, when you're being yourself, it does. I think that's actually, again, the thing that most of the world is learning and relearning now as well, because with the advent of social media and all these digital tools, it's been amazing, but we're really seeing again how much that capitalism has been layered into our subconscious, because the way in which we've now used these empowering tools has often been to disempower ourselves to these ideals that are so different from our lives, and again trying to chase this popularity or self-worth and belonging and a better world in a digital forum, forgetting that the digital forum is the tool to be able to assist us in our own personal development and how that can strengthen our communities. So it does feel like that's part of the consciousness shift that's happening right now. Now we have the tools. It's not like the tools are evil, but in what way do we want to use these tools to empower positive things for our world?
Totally. And it's like any addiction, right? It's like that thing can be good, but if you rely on it too much, it is bad.
Exactly.
And it's
everything is neutral. It's the way in which we approach it.
Yeah.
dispense it.
Totally.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so excited. This has been such a powerful conversation.
It's so easy.
So easy.
So easy.
And more to come. Everybody that's listening, also look down in the details of this story, because I'm going to tell you a lot of information about exactly where we are. For anyone in Los Angeles, stay tuned through July. There's going to be a lot of activations, and it's just a really special and exciting space. Meanwhile, Keshia, thank you so much. Where can people find you online?
Thank you for sharing your energy with me at Keshia Hannam, KESHIA across all the social media platforms. And Camel Assembly is Camel, like the animal, assembly.
Amazing. And I'll post those for you guys too. Thank you so much, love.
Love you.
Bye.